everyone, it's Kayla, and today I'm doing my 2015 reading wrap-up. I read a total of 78 books last year, and I'm going to say books loosely because according to Goodreads, 40 of them were either comics or graphic novels, so technically I didn't read 78 books, but I read 78 things in 2015. And in this video, I'm going to talk about my top 5 books or things I read in 2015, and my least favorite 5 things that I read in 2015. So let's get started. Starting with the 5 that I was disappointed in the most, we have The Stand by Stephen King. For those of you that don't know, this is one of his most popular works, and I believe he published it originally in like 1980, and in more recent years has come out with this version that I read that is completely unedited, and about 200 to 300 pages were added. I feel like the addition of these pages, it's like adding deleted scenes to movies. They're not really necessary, and I feel like because these pages were added, it's why I didn't really like the book as much. I was really fascinated with it in the beginning. For those of you that don't know what The Stand is about, it is about a post-apocalyptic world where a disease wiped out 99% of the world's population, and the people left have to learn how to thrive and find each other, and it's just a battle of good versus evil with some supernatural elements thrown in. And I just found that the unedited version really lagged in the middle of the story. Nothing was really happening for about 200 to 300 pages. I was really bored and disappointed. I was really fascinated in the beginning and how the disease spread, and it's really eye-opening how quickly disease can spread in this world. It is just scary, and I found those elements of the story fascinating. I found the good versus evil battle going on a little bit cliche and not really put together well. One of the things I loved about it, though, was the study of humanity, of course. Stephen King is just excellent at crafting flawed, grade characters, and I love that so much about his books. I felt like the ending of the story was rushed, and I just wish it would have had a better ending. I'm not necessarily sure what could have been better, but I just know that after reading 1,200 pages, the payoff could have been better. Up next on my disappointing reads list, we have a comic, Pretty Deadly Volume 1. I don't even know if they're making a Volume 2. I don't see it anywhere in my recommendations on Amazon or anything like that. I read this about a year ago. I just found the artwork confusing, the storyline confusing. It's a Western with supernatural elements, and I just didn't like the paneling at all. It's just the paneling is just all over the place. Like, what do I look at first? And that's one of my really big pet peeves when it comes to comics, and it's just not my favorite. So I won't be continuing with this series. Next, we have another comic, A Deadly Class by Rick Remender. This is the second volume, Kids of the Black Hole. And while I enjoy the artwork in this, the action scenes are fantastic. The scenes literally come to life on the page. I'm not a huge fan of the storyline, and I can't really pinpoint why, but I was talking to Lindsay at Lindsay Ray about this, and it just makes me feel uncomfortable, like grossed out in a way. And I know it's a popular comic series, and I'm really sad that I won't be continuing with it, but I just feel really uncomfortable reading it. For those of you that don't know, Deadly Class is a comic about a school for assassins. And while that premise sounds interesting, it just isn't executed very well or to my liking. So in my personal opinion, I felt uncomfortable with it, and I won't be continuing on. The last 2 disappointing reads of the year that I'm going to talk about might come as a shock to some of you because they're extremely popular on BookTube. First, I'm going to talk about Heir of Fire, and while I know Queen of Shadows was published in 2015, I only read Heir of Fire this summer, and I know a lot of people love Heir of Fire, and don't get me wrong, there were parts of it that I absolutely loved, but overall, I was very disappointed, especially since this followed Crown of Midnight. Crown of Midnight was fantastic, and I really enjoyed this book, but I was bored through a little bit of it, and I found Selena to be a little whiny and just mopey and not the badass assassin everyone says she is. I think I started it in like November 2014 and only finished it in August 2015. That's a problem. And based on the reviews I've been reading for Queen of Shadows, I'm going to be extra disappointed in that book, so I am not in a big rush to get to it. One of the only parts that I enjoyed about this book was Manon, the introduction of Manon. I love her as a character. I know a lot of people find her boring and her storyline boring, but no, Manon's where it's at. And my most disappointing read of 2015 is Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, and I'm not sure if I pronounced her name wrong. I know that a lot of people love this book. I understand why they would love it. There's a lot of great fantasy elements in it. There's a lot of great dystopian elements in it. Unfortunately, I felt like the elements were just thrown together from books that I have read in the past. I felt like this was a mashup of Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo and The Hunger Games. They literally used the main character as a symbol of the revolution, and also her storyline, her character arc. I can't think of her name right now, but her character arc reminds me so much of Alina's from Shadow and Bone that it's not even funny. This was just the most disappointing book I read this year. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. I've talked about it in other videos, so this probably isn't a shocker, but I just wish I enjoyed it as much as everyone else. Moving on to my favorite reads of 2015. Coming in at number 5, we have Walk on Earth a Stranger by Rae Carson. This is the first book in her Gold Seer trilogy. This is about a girl who can sense gold in the earth. She has the power to sense gold. And of course, living in the gold rush, this could present a problem, as you can imagine. And the book starts off with her parents being murdered, and that just sparks everything into action. She has to flee across the country disguised as a boy. She's traveling across the country, and basically this is a journey story, her journey across the country, and it was just absolutely fantastic. It has great friendships in it. It has great historical elements in it. Rae Carson really did her research, and I really appreciate that a lot. It's just literally horrifying and eye-opening what these people had to go through to get across the country in 1850s America. It just makes me really grateful to be a woman of the 21st century, because this is just eye-opening, guys. If you like historical fiction at all, if you like the Gold Rush era at all, if you like Rae Carson's The Girl of Fire and Thorns trilogy, which I love, you should definitely check this book out. I can't say enough, and I'm really excited for the sequel. And even though this is historical fiction and not fantasy, it has a fantasy element, but it's mainly historical fiction, she still makes you so absorbed into the world, and I really appreciate that a lot in her writing. Coming in at number 4 on my list, we have the entire Addicted series and Calloway Sister series by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is a new adult series, and yeah, I know, shocker, that Kayla loves a new adult series. I know, but this series, guys, is just fantastic, and I know I use that adjective a lot. This series essentially follows Lily, who is a sex addict, and her boyfriend or friend Lo, who is an alcoholic, and together they have to survive their addictions and come to terms with them. The other books in the series revolve around Rose and Daisy, Lily's sisters, and they are high society. They're all kind of rich kids, and I love that element a lot because it reminds me so much of when I used to read the A-List series by Zoe Dean. I'm not sure if any of you remember that series, but I loved that series when I was in high school, and I love this series much like I loved the A-List series back in the day. The first book, Addicted to You, was free on Kindle in September, so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna try it. I was done with the series, all 9 books, by like mid-November. I just flew through them. They were so great, and I'm so happy that I jumped on the bandwagon with this series. It's not really talked about a lot on BookTube, but a lot of bloggers talk about it, and I can see why, guys. I can see why. The writing is so consistent. I loved that aspect a lot. It's so great. The sisters write it together, and I was reading up on it on their blog, and they have like a addicted Bible where they write down all the facts so everything's consistent throughout each book, and I just really appreciate their writing style. And guys, I'm telling you, if you're looking to get into new adult, try the Addicted series. It's really fantastic. And then later on, the Calloway Sister series, even better. Highly recommend. Definitely one of my favorite reads of the year. Coming in at number 3 on my list, we have the Chew comic series by John Layman and Rob Guillory, and this is by Image Comics, of course, because hello, Image is the best. I love this series. I started it in 2015. I'm all caught up. There's 10 volumes out so far. This is the first volume, Taster's Choice. And for those of you that don't know, this story is about Tony Chew, and Tony Chew is a cybopath, which basically means if he takes a bite of something, he knows its complete history. He knows what tree an apple grew on if he takes a bite of an apple. He knows who killed the corpse if he takes a bite of the corpse. And as you can imagine, this comes into play because he gets hired by the Food and Drug Administration to solve major crimes. Essentially, the Food and Drug Administration is the CIA in this world because there was an avian flu, and basically chicken is contraband. It is illegal to eat chicken in this world, and this series is just so addictive, and I can't wait to see where the story goes. It's going to be 12 volumes in all, so there's only 2 left, and I'm really sad about it, so it'll probably end this year, I'm thinking, or maybe next year, 1 more volume, but I'm loving this series, and I'm so happy that I got into it. Coming in at number 2 on my favorites list, we have On the Island by Tracy Garvis Graves, and I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. What else is new? I pronounce authors wrong all the time. This book is about a woman who is in her late 20s. She is going to tutor this 16-year-old boy for the summer. She's on a plane with him to tutor him for the summer at his parents' vacation house when all of a sudden the plane goes down and they crash land on a deserted island, and they're there for literally years, guys, and it's just their story and how they survive and things that happen to them, and I absolutely loved this book. The 16-year-old boy is actually a cancer survivor, so that comes into play as well, and it's just such a powerful, amazing story, and I flew through it. I think I read it in a day. I think that it portrays the complications in their relationship really well and how they grow to know one another very well, and I really appreciated that a lot. And I'm probably going to reread it at some point. It is just fantastic, and I highly recommend it to anyone who likes survivor stories, who likes contemporary. I know, I'm shocked as well that I have a contemporary on my top 5 of 2015, but it happened, guys, because this book is awesome. And my favorite read of 2015 is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I had just read this in December, and this book definitely flew right to the top. It was just so good. I love a good fantasy, and it's been so long since I was absorbed into a great fantasy world, a great fantasy story, and this definitely brought me home. For those of you that don't know, this is not a really typical fantasy story. There's not a hero's journey or anything. Quoth is telling his story to a chronicler who is writing down everything that happened in Quoth's life. He takes 3 days to tell him the story. The trilogy is 3 days long, essentially. However, it's filled with flashbacks. The first book was basically about Quoth's childhood and how he got to the university, and yes, there is a magic school in here. I honestly think that the writing in this book is just on point. So consistent, so beautiful. It's just the way the story is told and crafted. I think I read it in a week or less, and it's like 700 pages. You just fly through it even though it's so long, and you're just so engrossed in the world and you feel like you're there experiencing everything. Unfortunately, book 3 does not have a release date in sight. However, book 2 was published in 2011, so I can only hope that it's in a year or so that the next book comes out, because I'm just having a great time reading this series. I really needed to get into a fantasy series again. It's just such an escape to read about another person's life in another world. It's just so fascinating, and I just need more. I need more. So yes, definitely The Name of the Wind is my favorite read of 2015. Let me know below what your favorite read of 2015 was, and also what your most disappointing read was, and I will see you soon in another video. Bye!